So what we're going to do is we're going to just go ahead and start in. We're going to do kind of a fireside chat format here where I will ask Ryan a couple questions and we're going to open it up to some Q&A. And then we have a few teams that are here to pitch. And they will each get 1 minute to pitch their idea to Ryan. They're going to come up and stand right here. And then we're going to hear Ryan's live kind of Q&A and feedback to each of those teams. We'll let each team get maybe a few minutes of Q&A and feedback. And then we'll do a little wrap-up. So, Ryan, you can still hear us? Good to go?
Very perfect.
Okay, great. And that was good enough for you guys?
Yep.
Volume-wise? Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to ask Ryan a couple of questions. So, Ryan, why don't you start us off and tell us about your story, starting from when you came to Duke and how you started to be recruited and what happened to be recruited.
Sure. First, thanks for having me. And goes without saying, if there are any questions, feel free to interrupt by you or by anyone. Informal is easier.
Cool.
So I came to Duke in '99, and I swam at Duke. And I'll take you through kind of my Duke experience and then how that kind of relates to be recruited because they happened at the same time. So I arrived in '99, was totally psyched to be there. And despite that, freshman year decided, while I'm happy to be at Duke, that getting here as a student athlete was really just a big pain in the ass. I was top 16 in the nation, and a good swimmer by all accounts. But what I quickly figured out was, unless your name is LeBron James and you play basketball or you play football, you're picking up the phone, you're making the phone calls, and you're introducing yourself. Back in '99, there was really nothing online that facilitated this kind of interaction. So freshman year, I set out to do three things. One, obviously pursue academics. Two, swim as fast as I could. And three, I started to be recruited in my dorm room. And be recruited was aimed at solving the problem that I had arriving at Duke, which was a lot of effort on behalf of myself, my parents, and the coaches. And there has to be an easy way to solve that and also make some money. So all of that together meant two things. One, I started as a computer science major at Duke and learned enough to be dangerous, but also learned that I was not good enough to do that as a career, honestly, nor was I necessarily interested in it. And eventually I switched majors, pursued English and economics and so forth. But it also meant that I created this be recruited concept and did it entirely in swimming. And I'll back up a little bit and explain what be recruited is. It's Match.com for high school athletes and college coaches. You create a personal, academic, and athletic profile, and we match you with all the coaches. And on the because I was a swimmer, because it is the single best sport to run this kind of product on. I never need to know you or see you. If you tell me your time, I know just how good you are and how you rank compared to any other 1,000 swimmers. So we launched in swimming. And at the time, it was entirely a swimming site. It was from day one, and when it launched in January 2000, it was a freemium product. So it was free for average use, but for premium accounts, which had different features to it, that cost money. At the time, it was I think it was $60 for a lifetime subscription. And over the course of 2 or 3 years, we really dominated swimming. When I left Duke, we had 98% of NCAA coaches in swimming. And when I would go to a swim meet, I would put my swim cap on and it said, "Be recruited on it." Didn't say my club team or Duke. And then I found a partner 2 years later who was a housemate and roommate of mine in Wayne Manor, Russell Cook. And he ended up running being the CTO, and I ran the business and knew enough about computer science to kind of run the front end of it. And we decided, he was year 2004. We decided, let's see what happens with Be Recruited beyond swimming. So we launched into lacrosse, which at the time was the fastest growing sport in the U.S. Not the biggest, but the fastest growing. Also not the best suited for this kind of platform, so we wanted to see if it was going to work. Lo and behold, it did. But we were at an interesting crossroads because while we were making money, I never raised a dollar for Be Recruited. It literally self-sustained. It was profitable. At that time, defined profitable if I wasn't paying myself. Russell wasn't paying himself, so profitable is a funky definition. But we were making real money, and we wanted to figure out, is this what we want to do full time, or knowing that Russell was a year beneath me, it was a really poor job market in 03. I had a job offer to go to eBay, and Russell the next year had an offer to go to Microsoft. So the decision we made was, let's run this thing at night while the two of us learn from being at a big company. And Microsoft as big as it gets, eBay very big. And we did that. So nights and weekends, literally I would go from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. at eBay, get home, have dinner, and work another 5 hours, 7-day period. And so we did that all the way through. Russell ended up quitting Microsoft a few years in, doing it full time. I left eBay in 07 when we sold a piece of it, and I ceased kind of doing day-to-day operations and moved on to the board. But that alone was a really interesting experience because here you have Be Recruited, which you hear a lot about virality today. And people their companies hitting these inflection points, just curve like this. But Be Recruited, it was funded out of my wallet, effectively. So there's no real ad budget. Everything had to be profitable. And it was by, pre-Facebook definition, it was a viral company. Sally would join as a water polo player, and the next year, summer would hit. The next year, her entire team was on there. And the next year, there'd be graduates and people would move on and on. But it also meant that it was very lean. And at this point now, there's 1.5 million athletes on it. We have a full team working on it. It's highly profitable. It's a great company. But the difference between doing that and being at eBay, where I came in and employed 2,500, and was interesting on a bunch of levels. At eBay, there's a handful of companies in the world where you can release a product and instantly touch tens of millions of users. There's also no experience like owning your own company and being able to go home, have a quick conversation over a coffee, and decide, okay, let's make this change, let's roll it out. And every change and every metric and everything that is affected is because you press the button. So those things, they're actually quite a nice balance, despite each probably teaching me in the long run the same thing, just a different way of getting it.
Cool. Well, that's great. And hey, are you folks seeing a video delay? Is that right? Okay. Hey, Ryan, there's a little bit of a video delay. The audio's totally fine, but I'm going to turn off my camera to see if that's all. Okay. All right. And then we'll turn the camera back on when the other folks are pitching. All right. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open it up to the audience for Q&A, so prep your questions. So the other question, so that was great, Ryan, on Be Recruited. That's a really good story. And so you got from there to where you are now, which is a principal at Polaris Venture Partners. And for those of you who don't know, Polaris is one of the best-known venture capital firms, certainly in the U.S., maybe the world. And you also run something for Polaris called Dogpatch Labs, which is based in Silicon Valley. And so just tell us how you got to Polaris, how you got to be doing what you're doing at Dogpatch, and just more about what it's like to be on that side of the table.
Sure. So on that side of the table, obviously means on the investment side as opposed to the operations side, I, from an early age, knew that I had this weird tick in my brain, which is I get bored doing the same thing, and I always have. And part of that is, I think, how some people are driven by entrepreneurship, some people are driven by creation, some people are driven by wealth creation. I've always just personally liked looking and thinking and doing different things. So when I was at Duke and in class and in the swimming pool, this be recruited concept was fascinating. When I was at eBay doing more than a full-time job and having a lot of fun doing it, be recruited was my nighttime. And when I kind of separated from both of those, at least on an operations side, a couple of things happened. One, I had a whole lot of free time that I didn't have before. And two, I realized that I am easily, I enjoy operating, and I enjoy the fact of being very hands-on and being able to affect certain things, primarily growth and products. Products always kind of been my passion. But I also realized, kind of thinking back historically, that after a year and a half, I'm always looking for kind of the next thing. And having been fortunate to kind of grow up around venture, realized that the best solution here that satisfies all my kind of curiosities, but also the business aspect, venture plays a great role in that. I like to say, look, if you're bored doing venture capital or investing, either you're way too good, or more likely you're really bad at it. It's the most active, filling your time, mentally satisfying position, at least for me. For others, they really struggle with that, and they like the hands-on operation, because one of the concepts of venture is it's not yours. There's interesting paths of leadership, but it's not your product at the end of the day. You're a partner, you're not a lead, you're not the owner. I also realized that knowing that eventually I wanted to get down that path, I thought back on my experience and realized that I believe the best venture capitalists are, or the ones that I relate to the most, doesn't mean they're the best, have just really deep experience and are very relatable. Second, I realized that my background was, I think, unique and interesting and relatable, but had a big gap. I had done this bootstrapped, profitable, interesting, but not massive company, and be recruited. And we had an exit, and there's real profit and EBITDA. But that was bootstrapped. I never raised a dollar. We never had a board of directors until we went through the first part of the sale. Meanwhile, I was at eBay, and I was employee 2,500 when I joined out of school. I left at 15,000. And no matter how successful you are at a company like that, you are in many ways a cog in a much larger engine. And I would never have traded that experience for anything else. I think particularly coming out of college, there's so many great things about doing that, but they're also, that's a different position. And I realized that the one piece that I think I needed for entrepreneurs to relate and for me to be helpful and experienced to fill that pie was to go join a venture-backed company in a management role. So board access, understanding great board members, and understanding what it means to prepare for the board, and have an organization and have the up and down. Running Be Recruited certainly has uncertainty and it has taxing issues, but I never had to report to anyone but myself. So I joined this company called Widgetbox, where we reported every day to our investors. Sequoia, Humber Winblad, Michael Deering, great investors, and we were figuring out a business model. And that was fun, it was unique, and it was an experience that bridged bootstraps, self-startup, large public company, and now venture back. And for me, then I was excited to be there, but it was always a step towards getting into venture. And so when the time was right to do that, Polaris was really interesting because I'd gotten to know the firm and the guys over really since my time at eBay. And they had this concept. Polaris is based in Boston as headquarters, but investments are everywhere from New York to Florida to Texas and California to Seattle, all over. But headquarters itself physically is in Boston. Meanwhile, we had a small West Coast office that was starting to percolate, and we called it DukeGEN Labs, which at the time, and I'll tell you more about it, was 5 desks. And it was entrepreneurs, my partner Mike Hirschland at the time was flying out here every other week, did not have an office, thought, hey, what better way to make an office than to hang out with entrepreneurs, and as opposed to being a single person in a single person's office. And so I was brought in to kind of spearhead our West Coast office, build presence, and grow DukeGEN Labs. And so DukeGEN is, let's step back for 1 second. Polaris is a big fund, and our hallmark is diversity. So we are evenly invested across a third late stage, a third A and B rounds, and a third seed rounds. So that means in total we'll do everything from a $100,000 check to a $20 million investment. Similarly, the third growth capital, which is usually first money into a usually consumerish businesses. A third life sciences, heavily out of Boston, Cambridge, MIT, etc. And a third tech, WordPress, QuantCast, JigJab, ShoeDazzle, so on and so forth. So trying to accomplish a few things, we really expanded on DukeGEN. 1, build a bigger presence. 2, we needed an office. 3, what better way to have an office than to do it among really interesting entrepreneurs. And 4, get really good insight into early stage deal flow and entrepreneurs. And so DukeGEN is for us a what we call an open source entrepreneurship community. That's either fancy or stupid, I don't figure that out yet, way to describe, it's a communal workplace. So we offer entrepreneurs the chance to hang out at DukeGEN for about 6 months, and they launch companies there, or they come in and the company is raising money or has just raised money, but very early stage. They're normally 2, 3, 4, 5-person companies. And in San Francisco, we have about 50 entrepreneurs. Over the last 2.5 years, we've had 250 entrepreneurs come through the program. That's resulted in $100 million of venture funding. And it's been so successful for us that we also now have one in Boston. We have one in New York City. And as of yesterday, we have one in Dublin, DukeGEN Europe. And it's very simple. You hear a lot of things like Y Combinator. Those are fantastic. And our difference does not mean I don't applaud them, but they're different. Those are programs where equity is at hand. They're actual curriculums. You enter on the same date as everyone, and you leave on the same date as everyone. Our philosophy has been, we think the right way for us to do it is to be loose and informal, and that means for us that we don't ask for equity. We don't take a right of first refusal. We don't invest in most of the companies. We've done, in the last 2.5 years, we've done 13 deals across all 3 DukeGENs. A obviously far larger number have been funded. What we do is give them a really cool environment, sit them next to really great entrepreneurs, organize events with great people like Facebook and TechCrunch and Google and Gunderson and AOL and Microsoft, and help facilitate a community that is more instructive and helpful than necessarily the curriculum. And for us, it's been great because at the very early stage, which is a core chunk of our investment, and our effort, it's been really helpful. I spend a lot of my time doing much more than seed investing, but as it pertains to that stage investing, DogFetch is a key funnel. Anything else I can tell you about DogFetch?
That's good. That's good. I think that's a really good overview both of your career and what you're doing now. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A from all of you. I do have a couple of prepared questions in case we need them, but I'm biased towards letting you all ask questions. And then, again, we'll do the 1-minute pitches at some point there. So who has a question for Ryan? Fernando.
Hi, Ryan. This is Fernando. One question. Why didn't you pursue investment, not be recruited?
Did you hear that?
Why didn't I pursue investment?
Yeah, and be recruited, yep.
So it's a great question, and it's strangely one that I reference a lot when I meet with entrepreneurs. I'll give a disorganized answer. The primary reason was I was lucky enough to have the option to not have to. We were making money. It was profitable from day one. Now it's 7-figure profit a year. That allowed us the option to not have to take on investment. The reason we never chose to take on investment while having that option is the moment you take an investment, it changes the way you have to think about the business. And obviously, I'm now in the business of saying that's a good thing. But as an entrepreneur, I think it's really important to think about the fact that venture and serious kind of angel money means you need to be a really big scale business. From day one, I knew, look, Be Recruited is not a multi-$100 million business. It's a good business. It's a very good business, but a venture capitalist is not going to be excited about Be Recruited selling for $75 million. I would be, but you have to start to think about all those implications when you take venture money. Now, obviously, the more money you take, the more that changes on the upside, and the less money you take, the less that's an implication. But we were fortunate enough that we never had to take angel money because we were making our own effective. Money was coming out of the business and we invested right back into it. So there is a phenomenon right now that's twofold. One, because it's very easy to start companies, not easy to start great companies, but far easier to start a company today than when I did. So you have a lot of interesting innovation happening at a pace that's much faster and more exhilarating than it was even 5 years ago. And two, there's a lot of seed capital. So you see a lot of companies raising very large seed rounds. And I caution entrepreneurs quite a bit to say, before you raise your money, think about the implications. And if you're excited about that, awesome. And that's the right kind of person and personality for the business that we'd love to work with. But that does not mean that you can't be personally very successful, or that the right decision is to not take money. There's plenty of examples where you see a company sell for $20 million, and it's a fantastic outcome, particularly if it's founder owns 75% of it. And for all the employees and whatnot, but those are difficult exits for everyone to be happy with once you start putting investors up close.
Good. Okay, another question for you.
Ryan, I have kind of two questions. Let's say, let me take you back in time. Let's say you're back at Duke. You've been being recruited for about a year. You're making some money, but not a lot. What would you do? Would you try to go to some place, and would Dogpatch Labs take a company like that?
Let's pause there and make sure you heard the first question here. So, Ryan, did you catch the first question?
Yes.
Okay.
But what is the actual question? What would I do with the business, or would Dogpatch Labs take it?
Both. So what would you do as the entrepreneur with the business? Would you try to, like, you wouldn't try to look for funding because you probably know that your business doesn't have hundreds of millions potential exit strategy. But is there any accelerator to go to, or do you just keep growing it from your money?
So it's interesting because that question obviously assumes that that's happening in today's world. Is kind of the weird juxtaposition here. And if you're going to make that assumption, I would say the piece that could have made you recruited at the time much bigger and faster growing would have been this Facebook environment, and Facebook just didn't exist back then. Look, I'm not against the concept of taking money. And if I were coming out right now of school and I had the ability to, own the space the way that we recruited those or did, I think taking a modest amount of money to accelerate growth would be a fantastic idea, and that would allow us to hire and to grow the team and to put some money across a profitable ad buy on Facebook. That would probably be my inclination, but I would go into it with the approach of this damn well better be the last money you take. It can't be money to get to a Series A, because I just don't think that is where the right direction for that business. I also think, and Hal and I went back and forth with some potential questions before, and I'll touch on one of them with your answer about, would Dogpatch, what I think about Dogpatch. So the short answer is, I think accelerators are always interested in great entrepreneurs. They're always interested in interesting business models, and they're certainly interested in companies that make money. So somewhere, I would say, my gut is you recruit and find a home. I do think that if you come out of school as an entrepreneur, there are massive benefits to going into a big organization. There are mentors, there's networks, there's understanding how an organization functions and struggles and does well that you just cannot get at a two-person company. You can't get, when I was at Widget Box, that whole concept it was a much tougher place for people to walk in as a 22, 23, 25-year-old than eBay, where there's systems around you to be helpful. And for that reason, more than most, I think that if you're jumping into entrepreneurship early, jumping in with a community and a network that's much bigger than yourself, for instance, might be afforded at a Dogpatch or a Techstars or a Y Combinator, those are great reasons to do that, because being alone not only is lonely, it's difficult. And alone can be, 5, 10-person company as opposed to just a single person. So being part of something that's bigger than you is very, very important. And I place a lot of value on that.
Good, Tito. Did you have a follow-on question, Tito?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to be one of the people that pitches their business, so you're going to understand what I mean better. I'm growing a company that will not get too big, but it has the potential to sell for tens or hundreds of millions if I get lucky. But we'll talk later.
He's setting up his pitch with you, Ryan. Get your checkbook ready. All right, I saw 2 questions over here. I'll go with you first.
Hey, Ryan, I was just wondering, you basically went to eBay to get industry experience while you kind of worked your venture. If you had to go back in time, you actually didn't have an entrepreneurial venture, but just had the aspirations. Based on your perspective in Polaris and Dogpatch, what industry or companies would you kind of look at to go into at this point, if you could go back in time?
Hey, Howie.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that for me?
Yeah, so he said you went to eBay to get large company experience. If you could do it now, what company would you go to?
Hands down, I'd go to Facebook. I think there's a bunch of important places to go. And what was great about eBay, let me step back. I think what you want to find is a place of high growth, a decent size and growing organization, and it's going to have the smartest and brightest people that you're going to know. You're going to build this massive network. eBay was just that. I got there and employed 2,500, became 5,000 within a year, 7,500 after 2. I was afforded the opportunity to take on big responsibility, launch major platforms, roll out products that literally touched millions and millions of people instantly. And more important than any of that, be around really excellent people who are now scattered across the valley, and some of which I've backed, and some of which I would die to back, and some of which I'm sure I'll work for at some point. The companies that are like that right now, I would say the one that I would be most attracted to as an early 20-something would be Facebook, because you have a bunch of extraordinarily smart people. They've built a magnificent organization. The scale at which they're operating is fantastic. They're still growing remarkably fast, so you get to see some of the large growth. You also get to see where they're going to have pain, because everyone has pain. And the most important pieces that I learned from eBay, honestly, were the parts what not to do in an organization. It's not a reflection on eBay as much as it is, look, as soon as you start layering in process and scale and size, it changes. That will happen at some point to anyone. And there's other great companies. If you go over to Google, I think you'll have a great experience. But I think they've gotten to the point where they're so big already that you might get lost as opposed to be a key contributor in something that's rampant. I think there's also, there's great companies that are, notches below in size. So I would just say, look for a place where you can make a dent. Make sure that the quality of people, top to bottom, is amazingly smart. And make sure that you believe, that I think a lot of times people optimize for themselves, especially when you're really young. In the grand scheme of things, if you can afford to, to do it, I would not optimize for salary. I just think in the grand scheme of things, whether you're getting paid $5,000 more or less than another offer isn't going to matter 15 years from now. What does matter is the impact you've made, the people you've met. And so I would optimize for those kind of things as opposed to, your individual salary or title. You just want to be in the best place possible. That obviously all changes over time. But I think you're afforded the opportunity to get better options through a better network and through a better pedigree.
Good answer. We'll take one more question and then let's do some pitches here. So sorry, Bernardo, but we'll get to your question afterwards, hopefully. All right, Navid, go ahead.
One of the most fascinating things, it sounds like you're really at Dogpatch are exposed to the cutting edge of tech entrepreneurship. Could you talk a little bit about some trends you've identified or some of the interesting ideas you're seeing out there?
Sure. So I think a lot of this is going to sound very simplistic, so I apologize in advance. There's a lot of interesting trends around the following, and again, simplistic. Take what Facebook has done and apply it throughout the web. And that creates a bunch of different verticals. For instance, major theme in the this consumerification of business or business apps, right? Look at how Google and Gmail and Google Docs, et cetera, are disrupting this whole suite of products that have existed elsewhere. Or the fact that what we're doing right here is being facilitated on Skype, which costs $4.99 a month. Or Twitter for the enterprise is now a pretty interesting concept. A really massive bucket that I'm excited about is very similar to that. Take Facebook and social and apply it to CRM. This age-old understanding of who your customer is, but the fact that you can reveal that, hey, your customer's name is Howie, that's great. That's kind of useful. Tell me where he lives. It's a little more useful. But now with Facebook and cloud and all these other interesting properties, I can determine how influential he is, different ways to, when he's most likely to respond to a contact, who he's most likely to respond to, his demographic, his likeliness to share, so on and so forth. I think that's a massive opportunity and relatively not missed, but not well understood. Then take Facebook one step further and say, Facebook, the power that Facebook has created is this concept of a social graph, right? If you take me, you can take all these nodes beneath and beside me and start to understand my relationship or relevance within a much larger sphere. That concept of the graph, I think, is really interesting because you now have a local graph, and that can present itself in a bunch of ways, whether it's Foursquare and check-ins, or whether it's a taste graph. Here is the taste maker, and here are all the people and the locations that kind of serve it, and again, who's influential, who's not. With places like Quora, you're starting to see a knowledge graph. Who's most influential, who's most knowledgeable. If you have a question to ask, who along that graph is worthy of asking questions to? So on and so forth. And then I think you also have this concept of, and one of my kind of key investment theses has been take Facebook and what it represents not as Facebook.com, but as a platform for identification and login and understanding this whole like graph and the taste graph, etc., and apply it to really big, important, but now outdated models. So social for real estate. You have social for CRM. Social for finance. All these kind of large areas. Obviously, you can't do any of this stuff without talking about the importance of mobile, where this conversation is being facilitated on a laptop, but I could have also done this on my cell phone. I could have also done this on my iPad. And if you look at my work habit in a given week, I spend more time on my iPad than I do on my laptop at this point. And so understanding how to, technically facilitate that is one big bucket. Understanding how to take advantage of that movement as a tool is really interesting. As a business, all the applications that now need to not be thought of as living in Windows or OS, but living on, the mobile OS. That's also interesting. And then I would say, most importantly, while we each have our own themes and theses, the most important part is, look, I'm willing to get excited about anything as long as there's, you start to see interesting usage. And for me, that doesn't mean mass adoption. It means that the users who are currently using it are massively engaged. And if they are super excited about it, I think that usually means between great marketing, great product, and better facilitation, it is capable of being much bigger than it is. And there are very few examples of companies that don't have massively engaged, for the right reason, products that don't become super successful.
Great. Good answer. Really good answer. Okay. So we're going to have Tito come up here and give a 1-minute pitch. Navid, can you be my timer, actually?
Yep.
Okay. So just go ahead and, yeah.
Are you going to toggle it on so I can see?
You know what? We'll try it for Tito here. It's slightly laggy still, so in case it's not working, then we'll toggle it off for others. Okay, so, all right. Tito, come on over. Okay. Ryan, you can see him all right?
I can.
Okay. Navid, Tito, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Ryan, I'm going to tell you about a business that you will hate. I have a way to solve the textbook problem at universities. And now I will tell you why not to hate it. This is an idea that everyone had. How can we make textbooks more affordable? And the problem is that they're looking either at Amazon or Craigslist. They are looking for a new and different way to sell textbooks, but they're not combining the elements that are already out there. So what we do is we take Amazon, we take Craigslist, we take the best elements, and we let students sell their books to one another. Every student has a book that someone else needs, but they're never selling to one another. What are the problems? Amazon, when you're trying to sell your textbooks there, if you post a book for sale and you sell it over the summer, you can't really ship it because it's back in storage. If you go to Craigslist and you post a book for sale, you get 100 people requesting the book, and then you have to meet up and get the cash. What Shelf Leaf does is we post your books on for sale online. If someone buys it, you have to deliver it. It's university specific, so if you sell it over the summer, you just have to deliver it as soon as you get back to campus. And that was 1 minute, and that was really short.
Hey, let's give them a hand, everybody.
So, the last one.
Yeah, Q&A and feedback. We'll combine it for about 3 to 5 minutes, 4 minutes here.
So I thought the pitch was really good. I generally wouldn't start with, "You're going to hate this." But that first sentence aside, I thought the pitch was really good. This is a space I know a ton about. I ran the Half.com internet marketing division. So my questions are probably a bit more pointed than I think your first meeting would be. The two major questions I have are, one, you're facing big incumbents, and that's not, and I wouldn't even say that those are Amazon and Craigslist. I would say they are Chegg and Book Renter, which at this point have become good scale. I'll tell you, they also become good acquirers for you. If you can dominate one or two markets, they will buy you. But back to the question of venture capital versus bootstrap. Well, that's probably not a venture capital return. It's something that would make you very happy if you could bootstrap. Two, and
do you
I
want
don't
me
know
to
how to quantify this, but I believe it's a matter of time before textbooks aren't textbooks. And the question is that 6 months or is that 50 years? Well, it's neither, right? It's probably in our lifetime, and it's probably closer to the time before our children end up in school. So it's on the horizon, and it's short. And so to me that says, for a lot of people, look, Chegg's going to have to rethink their business. Or you're going to have to rethink your business, and there's a life cycle on that. And then, lastly, on a marketplace, I would say, having spent a lot of time in marketplaces and having launched our, I ran our eBay's classified business, and we were up against Craigslist. Ultimately, the market dictates, how much you can sell in inventory. They go in concert, and that's what dictates success. So it's the reason eBay is so dominant today has nothing to do with the fact that whether or not it's a good product, it's because it's the largest. And so if you're able to dominate, Duke, for instance, is a textbook, that's a really good place to be. But if you're not able to dominate Duke, what happens is, as you selling the book, you're inclined to go to Chegg, because you get more money from Chegg and they have a bigger audience. So I think you need to think about how do you overcome that, and you might find that that's certainly doable from a guerrilla perspective. Then how do you replicate that across school? Or you might find that it's really expensive. So those are things. As an investor, I would want to see data from one or two locations.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to tell you more about the business. We have 30% of Duke signed up, so we have 1,872 students signed up. And we have 40 representatives at 25 different schools. And we're trying to replicate the same models that we did at Duke. We also have the advantage of having Facebook, so we can advertise with localized places. And yeah, that's where we're heading right now. But thanks for the feedback. And I heard that you guys invest from 100K up, and we're kind of looking for 100K. So it was... Perfect.
Awesome.
I'll ask Howie to give me your email if you're interested.
All right. Thank you again. Yeah, that's it. All right, we're going to jump right into Fernando giving his pitch. So whenever you're ready, Fernando, go ahead.
Yeah, Ryan, how are you? I'm Fernando. The product's called TeamBody.com. TeamBody helps youth soccer players feel like well-known, famous stars. We do this by replicating the atmosphere and the feeling that professional soccer players have and leveraging the power of social networks and the virality. So the cool thing about our product is that youth players can create their own player card like the one that they have on FIFA with their picture, the team that they play for, the number, their statistics and everything. They can join and create teams, create their own base of fans. They register their games and challenge their opponents and start a conversation between the games, among the games, and they can report the results on Facebook, Twitter, and some other platforms. Youth soccer is growing crazy in the U.S., so the involvement around youth soccer is estimated at 9.1 million people, and we're planning to make money by selling advertising and sponsorships on the first phase. On the second phase, opening new features for coaches and players so they can buy subscriptions.
Nice job. Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
So obviously near and dear to my heart, sounds, not too dissimilar from Be Recruited. I would say if you can get this thing to go viral, it has real potential. There's no question about that. Figuring out how to scalably reach, whether it's the coach, the parent, or the athlete, you have to figure out who the important person is. If you can figure out how to reach those people and turn the viral coefficient into something that is approaching 1, then that's particularly interesting. I would urge you to think about a business model that's not advertising based. In sports, advertising, in my opinion, in my experience, does not work. Unless you're ESPN and you have massive scale. This won't be massive scale in the ESPN realm. And by that I mean, if you're just running the math, right? Let's say you have 1 million users. Those users interact with you 10 times a month or whatever that number is. Right there you have 10 million impressions a month. Even if you aggressively multiply that by 10, now you have 100 million a month. It's very hard to make a big business off ad dollars for sports. It's different if you're doing finance or health or things like that. And then I would say don't stop at soccer. I would tailor the soccer experience to soccer, but why cut your audience in some percentage there? It's a bigger idea than just soccer, in my opinion. That also opens you up to more potential partners, acquirers, traffic, etc.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Great. Let's give him a hand. All right, next is Jack from Polymags.
Hey Ryan, how you doing?
How are you?
Doing very well, thanks. So Polymags is the Netflix of print magazines. The problem that Polymags addresses is that there are so many great options on the newsstands, but to subscribe to all of our favorites would be a waste of money, and we certainly don't have time to read all the magazines. So the content we end up getting is diluted and doesn't meet our needs efficiently. So how can print content be customized? You pay one low annual subscription fee and get access to hundreds of the most popular print magazines. You get different magazines every month, and you can manage your preferences from your web or mobile account, just like Netflix. And smart technology is employed to match your web activity to upcoming stories so that specific, timely magazine recommendations can be made. So what's the business case? Magazine audiences are growing because people still want print. It's a simple, proven business model, and there's no competition. And best of all, it improves people's lives by bringing them the print content they want the most.
Nice job, Jack. Let's give him a hand. Go ahead, Ryan.
So if I understand correctly, is it truly Netflix where I get my Sports Illustrated, I send it in, and I get my consumer reports, or is it you are just sending me 3 different magazines each month?
Yeah, you can get different magazines every month. You don't have to send them back. Does that answer your question? So it's not exactly like Netflix, but it offers you the variety and flexibility in terms of content that Netflix offers.
So then, how did economics work for you? How do you keep it? How do you keep the margin?
It's a commission-based model, just like any discount magazine website that you can go purchase a $5 or $10 subscription. So this business takes a commission off of every sale for the magazines from the publishing
And then,
company.
so you're saying if I subscribe to Consumer Report, you subscribe as the company to Consumer Reports, you send me one issue, but you're going to get the next 11 anyways?
Yeah, well, so we aggregate those subscriptions, and over time we can average how many subscriptions we're going to be purchasing from the publishing company. And we send one to you and one to the next guy. And so over time, those numbers average out and can be fairly estimated.
So, conceptually very interesting. I think that's a big logistics question, not just in the delivery, but in the algorithms, and there's some overhead with that, right? The same way there's overhead with Netflix. But Netflix probably has a better economic. Netflix's economics per disc are probably better because they don't go stale as fast as print. Maybe, I'm just guessing. So that would be a consideration. I think where this gets really interesting is if you can begin to figure out digital delivery. Because then sitting on the iPad, for instance, and on a subscriber to XYZ, a la carte, not only can that start to solve your logistics and your margin issue, but it probably is also advertising to all the big publishers. You're starting to see some stuff flirting with that. There's a company called Ongo, which is kind of interesting. You see a bunch of these curated magazines, Site, Editions, Flipboard, etc. But to me, that's where this gets really interesting. Because not unlike the textbook piece, I do think in our lifetime, more content is going to be read on your mobile device than in print, unless you're at least on the subscription plan. I think there will always be a need for. I just walked into the airport. I got 2 hours to kill. I'm going to go buy 5 magazines. And I actually think, I don't have data, but my gut is that accounts, that in supermarkets and People Magazine, that stuff accounts for the bill of magazines. But on the mobile side, if you can tap into that, I think it's very interesting.
Thanks for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Great. And Jack, are you still looking for teammates?
I am, yes.
All right, if you like Jack, so you just got Ryan to say that was an interesting idea. If you like magazines, then talk to Jack. Okay, thanks a lot, Ryan. Let's give him a hand. And we got one more pitch for you, Ryan, and then we'll move to kind of wrap up so you can give some kind of final words of advice. And Amaya, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Hello, Ryan. So there is a great need in the market for people to connect. Is it my own voice?
I think it is. We'll start you again. Hey, Ryan, can you still hear us okay?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Amanda, go ahead and start again from the beginning.
Hi, there is a great need in the market for people to connect on health problems. A diabetic person would like to know that whatever he is eating in a restaurant, whether it's going to make his blood sugar levels shoot up or not. If a person with a knee problem might want to know if certain running shoes are good for him or not. So our idea is actually to connect people with common problems, common health problems. It will be it will be an iPhone app or a Droid-based app, which will be like a chat application for people to connect with people having similar problems. You don't need to actually know the people, but consider this scenario where you actually just got your medical report and you don't like whether your HDL or LDL is at an appropriate level and you don't know how to read it. You can take a picture of it and you can actually shoot it on this web application and hoping that there will be 10 other users who will be online who can give you an instant feedback rather than waiting for people on forums to wait for the feedback.
Okay, Ryan, you're up.
So we like it so much that we've invested in a company called Health Central, which the premise is verticals, very tight verticals, right? Diabetes or I don't know. You name the either the problem or the type of person, and there is a community specifically built to that because we have the belief that, or they have the belief, and we support it, that I'm less likely to discuss my affliction in a world, in an environment where it's not everyone like me. And so that kind of diversity on the horizontal layer, but very tight verticals underneath, we believe is a great idea. I will say the questions to ask are, what's the business model? Advertising inside Deep Health is very high CPMs, but very, very highly regulated. So it's not as easy as saying, okay, if we get 10 million impressions, we can get a $20 CPM, boom. It's much more complicated than that. And creating or fostering an environment of just nothing but supportive, trustworthy brand and users really becomes your big hurdle. The minute that anything is questioned in terms of trust or kind of cleanliness, you run the risk of losing the user base. That said, I like it a lot. I think verticalizing it, if you can figure out a way to horizontally transfer people from vertical to vertical where applicable, that's the holy grail. Because I just fundamentally believe as an Uber brand and app, you're not going to get enough usage because it's not specific enough to me. You can get a lot of usage as individual apps, but very few people are able to make this, to migrate people and traverse them across, and that affects everyone. I mean, look at Zynga. Zynga, the best in the world at doing this isn't able to get at 100% of people from one game to the next. They're disparate properties. But I like it.
All right, great. And Maya, you... No, that's too bad. All right, thanks a lot, Ravan. Okay, so Ryan, a little bit of a echo here, Ryan, but you sound fine. So Ryan, let's just leave it to you for kind of final comments and advice for students as they think about starting a company either now or maybe a few years from now.
So, disorganized answer who's unprepared. First, just realize whatever you're going to do, you're investing not only all your effort, but a lot of time that's way longer than I think you necessarily consider when you set out to do something, which is a covered way of saying, make sure you really love what you're doing, right? So if you want to do that health idea, that's probably an example of an idea that you're really excited about and feel good about and make a big impact. If that wasn't the case, I would really urge you not to do it. And for health, obviously, that's a great example of one where you feel great about it. If, for instance, you're starting a social gaming company because you need to make a lot of money, my only advice is make sure you love it, because you're going to spend way more time than you think, and particularly when you raise money. That's not a one-year commitment. It's a commitment through the longevity of the company. So that's one. Two, in terms of actually doing the company, I would, where I see people fail again and again, do one thing really, really well. Don't do 10 things decently well. Even 10 things pretty well isn't as powerful as doing one thing really well. And you can, you can just go down run the gamut of examples of great companies. We have, I'll just give you two dog patch companies as an example. I don't know if anyone's used Instagram, but that company launched inside Dog Patch, and in 12 hours had something like 1 million users on the iPhone. Why is it so popular? I can't answer entirely, but I would say they made a better phone than the iPhone. And when you use it, whether you've never used an iPhone before or you're the most savvy tech person, there's something beautiful about it in its simplicity, and they hammered that, and it worked really well. Another company called Recurly, where there's a bunch of people doing online billing, there's a bunch of people doing online invoicing, but everyone kind of forgot that, hey, to do recurring billing for companies like Be Recruited, which charge $15 a month, is really painful for the consumer and for the company. And they said, okay, let's solve that. And that's become a nice business. So figure out one thing that resonates most with your users, and nail that. Don't nail all the surrounding pieces. 3, make sure it has a need. And there is, what we backed this guy Sean Ellis a couple times now, but his concept is, make sure it has a customer fit, a consumer need. And if it doesn't have a fit, keep tweaking it until it does. And his way of measuring that is to basically survey his users and say, if this didn't exist, how unhappy would you be? And if people said, 7 times out of 10, I'd be unhappy, you got something. But if you're building something that people, they're using it because it's in front of them, not because they love it, that begins to, be an issue. That stuff is much easier to experiment with early on than it is as you've gone too far down the path. And then 3, I generally, I did Be Recruited alone for a while. I've seen a lot of, solo entrepreneurs. There's so much value in finding a great partner, and that partner, it's the cliched example of 1 + 1 is way more than 2. And make sure that you aren't the same people, right? Make sure that you guys complement each other by being different. And make sure you don't have to be best friends, but again, this is it's a marriage. It's a long-term commitment to each other that extends through the longevity of the company. So if you don't think that this, if you think 1, you guys are redundant, bad idea. 2, if it's not someone you feel fantastic about, bad idea. And 3, or related to that but not separate, someone's got to be technical. In today's world, you just don't see 2 business guys as founders. You might see 3 founders and 1 co-founders and a business guy, but you don't see or two technical co-founders. But people look a lot more today like the combination of Russell and me, where Russell is a tech guy and I am not. I'm technical, but I can't code backend. And that's what I would make sure that you have something like that, and so you're not. So many early companies have this great idea, but they're paying $100 an hour to this guy overseas to outsource it, and that's just not gonna. First, that's gonna be really expensive too. It's not gonna grow.
Cool. All right. There's a terrible echo here. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask if. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to ask if you'd be okay with staying around here. That's the end of our session, but usually we like to have a couple people be able to come up and have a one-on-one chat. So if anybody wants to say hi to Ryan, raise your hand now. We got Tito, May, a couple more. Okay, so Ryan, there's like 4 people that want to come up and kind of do a one-on-one chat with you. So you cool with staying around a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody for the session. Do you have a question, Nicken?
I had an announcement.
We have an announcement.
Did you want to?
No? Yeah. We invited Ryan to be part of the Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Conference. It's going to be November the 5th. And on a panel that's about sports and business. And so if you want to join him now, it would be great if you come again.
Great. Okay, they're pitching your panel at our conference, the EDCC's conference.
So Ryan, as well as many other entrepreneurs and investors, will be at the conference. It's Saturday, November 5th. So if you're interested in meeting them in person or other people.
Great. Okay, well, everybody, great to see you. Please fill out your feedback forms before you leave, and just leave them there.